Trump halts his Cadillac One motorcade for a homeless elderly woman, and what he does next will inspire millions. That afternoon, the city was bathed in the scorching summer sun. The ceaseless honking of cars and the crowd bustling along the sidewalks painted the usual vibrant picture of a modern metropolis. Amid this hurried atmosphere, Donald Trump's Cadillac One motorcade cruised by, exuding authority. The lead car gleamed under the blazing sunlight, drawing every eye toward its commanding presence. Inside the car, Trump was focused on a report being delivered by one of his advisors. The assistant's steady voice filled the cabin, but Trump's attention was suddenly drawn outside the window. What he saw made him pause. Amid the crowded sidewalk stood a frail elderly woman. She was so diminutive that she seemed to be swallowed by the rushing crowd. Her hair was stark white, her face deeply etched with wrinkles from time and weariness. In her trembling hands she held a worn piece of cardboard with faded yet unmistakable words. "Please help me. My granddaughter needs a miracle." Her eyes held a quiet plea as though waiting for someone to notice, yet every passerby simply walked on. Some glanced her way briefly, others turned their faces, but no one stopped. Trump fell silent, his gaze fixed on the scene. He felt an inexplicable pull, as though he couldn't just watch and move on. "Stop the car," he said, his voice calm but commanding. The motorcade screeched to a halt in the middle of the busy street. Brakes squealed, and cars behind them came to an abrupt stop, creating a ripple of surprise. Inside the vehicle, his advisors and security team exchanged bewildered looks. "Sir, this area isn't safe. We should keep moving," one of the security personnel quickly cautioned, his tone careful. Trump shook his head, his eyes never leaving the elderly woman on the sidewalk. "No, I want to know her story." No one dared to argue. In the heavy silence, Trump opened the car door and stepped out. The moment his polished shoes hit the pavement, the atmosphere seemed to shift. The usual city noise softened, and every eye turned toward him. Some recognized him immediately and hurriedly pulled out their phones to capture the moment. He walked toward the woman with slow, deliberate steps. When he reached her, he bent slightly, his gaze meeting hers, not as a powerful leader, but as a man filled with compassion. "What's your name?" Trump asked, his voice softer than usual, but still carrying the gravity of his stature. The elderly woman looked up, her cloudy eyes filled with a mixture of fear and hope. After a pause, she answered, her voice quivering. "My name is Martha. Why are you here?" he asked gently, his tone calm and reassuring. Martha took a deep breath, clutching the cardboard sign tightly, as if letting go would mean losing her last shred of hope. "My granddaughter, she needs help. Her parents died in the flood recently. It's just me now, but I don't know what to do. We've lost our home. We've lost everything. I just want to save her." Her words rang in Trump's mind like a bell. He didn't just hear her pain. He felt the despair and determination woven into her frail voice. He exhaled deeply, straightening up and glancing back at his motorcade. "Get the car ready. I want to go where she's staying." "Sir, this area is unsafe. We shouldn't linger here," a security officer spoke up, his voice tinged with worry. Trump turned to him, his gaze unwavering and resolute. "If she can live there, I can visit. If you're scared, feel free to stay behind." No one dared to protest. In the stillness that followed, Trump placed a reassuring hand on Martha's shoulder, his eyes filled with determination. "Lead the way. I want to meet your granddaughter." Martha stared at him, her eyes glimmering with a spark of newfound hope. She nodded, her steps slow but resolute as she guided Trump and his motorcade toward a journey none of them could have predicted, one that would change everything. Mrs. Martha walked slowly, her frail figure seeming to buckle under the weight of memories and responsibilities. Her hands clutched tightly onto an old worn sign, as though it was the last tangible piece of her life she could still hold on to. Behind her, the motorcade of Cadillac One crept along, creating a surreal scene in the bustling neighborhood. Trump walked beside her, his eyes fixed on her small, stooped frame. He could feel the burden she carried in every step she took. "Mrs. Martha, what happened to your family?" Trump broke the silence, his voice warm but filled with a serious undertone. Mrs. Martha paused for a moment before turning to look at him. Her cloudy eyes reflected a deep sorrow, but also a glimmer of resilience. "It was the biggest flood I've ever seen," she said, her voice trembling. "The water rose so fast, faster than we could do anything. My son Jack and my daughter-in-law Laura tried to get Emma to safety, but they didn't make it." Her voice quivered, and her hands gripped the sign tighter, as though trying to suppress the surge of emotions threatening to overwhelm her. "Jack yelled at me to take Emma and run. He and Laura said they'd figure out a way to escape later. But the current, it was too strong. It swept them away. I couldn't do anything except hold Emma tight and pray. When I found my son, it was too late." Tears rolled down her wrinkled face, but her voice continued steady, yet full of pain. "We lost everything. Our home, our belongings, our memories. Now it's just Emma and me, trying to survive each day. But I'm old, and I can't give her the life she deserves." Trump stood silent for a moment. Her story wasn't just about personal tragedy. It painted a broader picture of countless families enduring loss and despair. "What have you been doing since then?" Trump asked, his voice low. Mrs. Martha lowered her head, her shoulders sagging even more. "I've done whatever I could, from cleaning houses to collecting recyclables, but I'm not as strong as I used to be. No one wants to hire me anymore. In the end, I took to the streets with this sign, hoping someone would stop to help, but they just passed by as if I don't exist." Trump said nothing, but his gaze grew heavier. He watched her walk, her steps slower now, weighed down by her story. They turned into a narrow alley. On either side, the walls were worn and cracked, with broken bricks scattered along the ground. The motorcade behind them was almost swallowed by the oppressive atmosphere and the stench of garbage strewn about. "We're here," Mrs. Martha said softly, pointing to the end of the alley. Before them stood a makeshift shelter, cobbled together from plastic sheets and scraps of wood. The torn tarps revealed a cramped space inside, barely big enough for two people to lie down. An old wooden bed, a few broken plastic chairs, and a table fashioned from stacked cardboard boxes made up the entirety of their possessions. Trump stopped in front of the shelter, his eyes scanning the surroundings. A few children, their faces streaked with dirt, played with empty tin cans, stealing curious glances at him and the motorcade. Adults stood at a distance, their eyes a mix of suspicion and unease. From inside the shelter, a small voice called out, "Grandma." A frail little girl, about 10 years old, stepped out. Her tangled hair nearly obscured her face, and her tiny hands clutched a makeshift doll crafted from a plastic bottle and scraps of fabric. "Emma, come here," Mrs. Martha called. The girl ran to her, wrapping her arms around her grandmother. Her curious gaze shifted to Trump. "You don't have to be afraid, Emma," Trump said gently, lowering himself to her eye level. Your name is Emma, right? The girl nodded, her eyes still cautious. Can you tell me about yourself? Trump asked, his warm smile softening her apprehension. Emma glanced at Mrs. Martha, seeking approval. When her grandmother nodded, she began to speak, her voice shaky. I don't remember much about that night, just that the water came so fast. My mom and dad told me to run to the neighbors, but they didn't make it. After that, I stayed with Grandma, but she's worked so hard. I don't want her to suffer anymore. I just want her to rest. Her voice cracked, and tears began to stream down her thin cheeks. Trump placed a hand on her shoulder, his voice firm yet comforting. You've been very brave, Emma, and so has your grandmother. But from now on, you won't have to fight this alone. I'm here to help. Emma looked up at him, her large eyes shimmering with a spark of hope. She nodded, but still clung tightly to Mrs. Martha, as if afraid that all of this might just be a fleeting dream. Trump turned to his motorcade, his expression resolute. I want a full report on Mrs. Martha's health and the living conditions here immediately, he commanded. Starting tonight, I want a medical team assessing both her and Emma, and not just them. I want to know about every family in this area. One of his advisors hesitated. Sir, perhaps we should leave this to charitable organizations for long-term management. Trump interrupted, his voice ringing with conviction. No, they've waited long enough. If a little girl like Emma can stand here and fight for her grandmother, we have no excuse to delay action. Starts now. Emma looked up at him, her tear-filled eyes wide with gratitude. She whispered, her voice small but filled with emotion. Thank you, Mr. Trump. I just want Grandma to stop worrying. Trump bent down, meeting her gaze directly. I promise you, Emma, this is just the beginning. You've done enough. Now it's my turn to help you. Emma and Mrs. Martha led Trump deeper into the slums, where sunlight was obscured by patchwork roofs made of old tin sheets and plastic tarps. The narrow pathway grew tighter, flanked by piles of trash and stagnant puddles, emanating a damp, moldy odor. Each step Trump took was a vivid reminder of the hardship many people face daily. Residents began to emerge from their homes, their gazes a mixture of curiosity and suspicion. To them, the sight of someone like Trump, dressed impeccably in a suit, walking amidst the crumbling homes was beyond imagination. At first they kept their distance, observing from afar. Mrs. Martha glanced back at him, her voice soft but firm. Sir, I'm not the only one living like this. Many people here lost everything after the flood. We're not just poor, we're forgotten. Her words opened a floodgate for countless untold stories. A middle-aged man, thin and clad in a worn-out t-shirt, hesitated for a moment before stepping forward and speaking. Mr. Trump, I can't believe you're really here. Trump nodded, his voice warm. Can you share your story with me? The man took a deep breath, as if summoning all his courage. My name is Sam. I used to work at a mechanic shop. After the flood, the shop was completely destroyed. I lost my job, my home. Now it's just me and my 2 kids. I've been trying to find work, but no one wants to hire someone like me. No qualifications, nothing left. We survive on meager charity meals and days spent scavenging recyclables. But the most painful thing is watching my kids grow up without an education. Following Sam's gaze, Trump saw 2 children sitting by a pile of trash, picking through scraps to amuse themselves. Their small hands were dirty, but their eyes shone with innocence and yearning. We don't need much, Sam continued, his voice breaking. I just want a chance to work, to give my kids the life they deserve. Like an unstoppable wave, more residents of the slum began to approach. bringing their stories with them. A woman cradling a small child, her face streaked with tears, spoke. My husband died in the flood. I'm raising 2 kids on my own, working at a garment factory, but the wages aren't enough for food, let alone sending them to school. I just want my children to have a better future than I did. A war veteran leaning on a cane stepped forward, his voice heavy. I fought for this country, but when I came back, I had nothing left. No home, no job. I survive on food donations, but it's not enough. I gave everything I had, and now I've been left behind. Each story, each voice carried its own burden of pain. Trump stood there, listening intently, his expression thoughtful and somber. Emma looked at him, her eyes bright yet brimming with tears. Everyone here is the same, Uncle. They just want to live, but living is so hard. The crowd grew larger. People stood shoulder to shoulder, their eyes shifting from doubt to hope. Trump climbed onto a large rock in the middle of the alley so everyone could see him. I've heard your stories, he began, his voice resolute. And I want to tell you, you are not forgotten. I'm here not just to listen, but to act. Murmurs rippled through the crowd. Trump raised his hand, continuing, I can't change the past, but I can make sure that from today onward, none of you will have to endure this alone. I promise you, we will bring change, not just for Mrs. Martha and Emma, but for everyone here. The crowd fell silent for a moment before applause began to rise. At first it was scattered, but it soon swelled into a wave of hope spreading through those who had long felt abandoned. Trump turned to his team, his voice firm, leaving no room for debate. I want a medical team here tonight to check on everyone's health, find a way to provide temporary shelter for families without safe homes, create a list of every family, their circumstances, and their needs. I want a comprehensive report within 24 hours. One advisor hesitated. Sir, this will require time and a detailed plan. Trump cut him off, his voice strong and unwavering. They've waited long enough. If a little girl like Emma can stand on the street begging for help for her grandmother, we have no excuse to delay. Start now. As Trump prepared to leave, Emma suddenly ran up and grasped his hand. Her eyes sparkled with a mix of faith and worry. Uncle Trump, you'll really help everyone, won't you? You won't leave us behind, right? Trump knelt down, placing a reassuring hand on her shoulder. You've done your part, Emma. Now it's my turn. Trust me, this is just the beginning. Emma nodded, a small smile, the first in days, spreading across her face. The crowd watched as Trump stepped into his Cadillac. To them, he no longer seemed like a distant leader, but someone who empathized, someone willing to fight for them. As the convoy began to move, Trump stared out the window, his gaze contemplative yet determined. He spoke softly to the advisor beside him. I made a promise, and I intend to keep it. Get everything ready. This journey has just begun. The next morning, the slum was unusually quiet, but the silence was quickly broken as large trucks carrying medical teams, relief supplies, and social workers rolled in. The sound of engines and hurried footsteps echoed through the streets, drawing the curious eyes of the residents. Emma grabbed Grandma Martha's hand and pulled her to the front of their small tent. The little girl couldn't hide her excitement. Grandma, they're here! They really came! Grandma Martha stood frozen, tears welling in her eyes. For years she had grown used to empty promises dissolving into silence, and every glimmer of hope crushed by indifference. But today, something was different. Yes, Emma, they're really here, she whispered, her voice trembling. From their tent, They could see the medical workers and volunteers unloading supplies and setting up temporary medical stations. Tables piled with food and water lined the narrow pathways. Groups of residents, initially hesitant, began stepping out of their homes, their eyes filled with astonishment. Healthcare workers moved from house to house conducting health checks. They discovered numerous cases of malnutrition, untreated illnesses, and seriously infected wounds. When it was Emma and Grandma Martha's turn, a young doctor knelt and asked gently, "How long have you been enduring this pain?" Grandma Martha gave a weary smile. "I don't remember anymore. I just know I have to keep going for Emma. She's all I have left." Emma squeezed her grandmother's hand tightly, her eyes shining with determination. "We're not alone anymore, Grandma. They'll help us, I promise." The doctor's eyes glistened with emotion at Emma's words. He prescribed medication, gave detailed instructions, and promised to follow up on Grandma Martha's health in the coming days. The arrival of the medical team not only provided help, but also sparked a flame of hope in the hearts of the residents. News of Trump's initiative spread quickly beyond the slum. Charities and large corporations began to take notice and join in. The Construction Corporation, a company, pledged to repair and rebuild damaged homes, ensuring every family had a safe and sturdy place to live. The tech company, a major tech firm, provided free solar energy systems, giving families light without the burden of electricity bills. The education organization, a charitable foundation, committed to setting up temporary schools in the area, giving children like Emma a chance to learn while permanent schools were being built. In the following days, Emma became more than just a recipient of aid. She became a symbol of change. She gathered the children in the slum and started teaching them basic lessons using old books she had found. "If we want to change things, we have to learn," Emma told the kids, her eyes bright with determination. The children, initially shy, gradually gathered around Emma, hanging on to her every word. The sight of a skinny little girl in tattered clothes standing among the children, teaching them to read and write, moved many of the volunteers to tears. From a distance, an elderly woman watched and softly said to a healthcare worker, "She's not just a child. She's the light for all of us." Meanwhile, from his office, Trump closely monitored the entire operation. He demanded detailed progress reports every hour and refused to accept any delays. "This isn't short-term charity," Trump said during a virtual meeting with his team. "We're building a sustainable future for them. I want to ensure that when we leave, they can stand on their own without depending on anyone else." A week later, Trump held a press conference to share what had been accomplished in the slum. The room was packed as he stepped up to the podium, his expression serious and full of responsibility. "When I visited that place, I heard some of the most heartbreaking stories imaginable, but I also saw courage, an elderly woman who refused to give up hope, a little girl who stood up for her family despite the odds. They reminded me of our duty to ensure no one is forgotten." Trump paused briefly before continuing. "I cannot change their past, but I can do everything in my power to ensure their future is brighter. This is not just an act of kindness, it's a commitment, and this commitment will not stop with one slum. It will ripple across this nation." A month later, in the heart of the slum where a garbage dump once stood, a small park was built. At its center, a modest monument was erected to commemorate what had taken place. The monument depicted a little girl holding her grandmother's hand, symbolizing hope and resilience. At its base, the inscription read, "Hope begins in the smallest places." Emma and Grandma Martha stood before the monument, their faces radiant. Grandma Martha turned to Emma and asked softly, "Do you think a cardboard sign can change the world?" Emma smiled, her eyes glimmering. "Not the sign, Grandma. It's the courage to hold it up and the kindness of those who stop to listen." When Trump saw the news about the transformation of the slum, he smiled, though his eyes carried a hint of concern. Turning to his team, he said, "There are too many places like that one. We cannot stop now. Starting today, this will be our mission to ensure no one is forgotten. Get ready, because this journey is just beginning." 2 months after Trump initiated his actions, the once forgotten slum underwent a remarkable transformation. The rickety makeshift shelters that previously defined the area were replaced by sturdy new homes. Streets that had been littered with trash and shrouded in darkness were now spotless, illuminated by solar-powered lights lining the narrow alleys. The laughter and chatter of children echoed from a central area that used to be a garbage dump. Here, a temporary school with mobile classrooms had been established. Simple wooden desks and chairs were neatly arranged and clean, becoming the first place many children had ever encountered learning. Emma was among the first students. Not only did she eagerly absorb knowledge, but she also took it upon herself to help other children. Emma became a source of inspiration, a living symbol of change. I believe that if we can learn to read and write, we can achieve so much more. We won't be afraid anymore, and I want my friends to feel the same, Emma told a volunteer teaching her how to mentor younger children. The community where Martha and Emma lived wasn't the only one to receive attention. The Hope for the Forgotten movement began to spread, sparking similar initiatives in numerous areas across the nation. Contributions from major organizations included: 1. One Construction Company, a major firm, funded the construction of over 50 new homes for struggling families, pledging to maintain housing quality for at least 10 years. 2. Two tech companies installed solar energy systems in impoverished communities, reducing electricity costs and providing light to families who had lived in darkness. 3. Three educational organizations set up temporary schools, provided free teaching materials for children, and organized vocational training classes for adults. Community actions included: 1. Students in schools organized donation drives for used textbooks, school supplies, and clothing, which were sent to underprivileged areas. 2. Veterans groups formed volunteer teams to repair homes and offer job support to families in need. 3. Artists and celebrities used their platforms to spread the message, hosting fundraisers and charity events. 3 months after the movement began, Trump hosted a grand event at the White House to honor individuals and organizations that contributed to the change. The Grand Hall of the White House was elegantly yet humbly adorned, welcoming hundreds of special guests, including former slum residents. As Trump stepped up to the podium, his gaze swept across the room. He began his speech with a voice that was both strong and heartfelt. "When I saw Mara and Emma standing on the sidewalk, I didn't just see two people. I saw an entire community forgotten by the world. I saw pain, but I also saw courage. Change doesn't begin with grand gestures. It starts with small acts, like Emma standing up for her grandmother. Today, we're not just celebrating them. We're making a collective promise. No one will be left behind." After his speech, Trump called Emma and Martha to the stage. The room fell silent As the grandmother and granddaughter stepped up, holding hands tightly, Emma, dressed in a simple white dress, scanned the crowd. Her eyes shone with a confidence she had never known. "I'm just a kid with an old cardboard sign," she began. "But because people stopped to listen, my grandmother and I aren't alone anymore. Now I know that with courage and faith, we can change the world. Thank you, Mr. Trump, and thank you to everyone who helped us and our community." The hall erupted in applause. Many couldn't hold back their tears, looking at the young girl as a beacon of hope and resilience. Months later, in the area that had once been a garbage dump in the slum, a monument was unveiled. The statue depicted a young girl holding hands with an elderly woman, with new homes in the background. At the base of the monument were the words, "Hope begins in the smallest places." Emma and Martha attended the unveiling ceremony. Martha whispered, her voice trembling with emotion, "Did you ever think your cardboard sign would lead to this?" Emma smiled, her eyes gleaming with determination. "It wasn't the sign, Grandma. It was the kindness of those who stopped to listen." The story of Emma and Martha didn't end with one slum. Inspired by the movement, many other communities across the United States began receiving help. In the South, a flood-stricken community was provided funds to construct a new levee system, ensuring long-term safety. In the Midwest, homeless veteran families received free housing and vocational training programs to secure stable jobs. In the West, a community school was built in a remote mountainous region, offering educational opportunities to hundreds of children. The movement didn't just transform the lives of the poor, it awakened a sense of collective responsibility across society. Watching the news about the slum's transformation, Trump smiled, though his eyes remained contemplative. A nearby advisor asked, "How do you feel about all this?" Trump replied firmly, "I didn't do this to feel good. I did it out of duty, and this duty doesn't end here. There are still places like that slum. We can't stop now. This is just the beginning." Turning to his team of advisors, his voice brimmed with determination. "Prepare the next plan. This journey has no end. We will keep going until no one has to live like that anymore." More than 6 months after the Hope for the Forgotten movement began, the slum where Martha and Emma once lived had transformed into a model for change. The trash-filled streets were now paved with clean bricks, and ramshackle homes were replaced by sturdy small houses built through donations from charities and government initiatives. At the heart of the community, where once a garbage-strewn vacant lot stood, there now lay a small park with lush green grass, playgrounds for children, and a fully equipped recreational area. A small stone monument had been erected there, depicting a young girl holding the hand of an elderly woman, a symbol of resilience and hope. Emma stood in the middle of the park, tightly holding Martha's hand, watching children play around them. "Grandma, is this a dream?" Emma asked, her eyes brimming with joy. Martha smiled gently, her wrinkled hand stroking the little girl's head. "No, Emma, this is real, and it all started with your courage." The movement initiated by Trump did not stop at just one small community, but spread across America. From the flood-stricken South to the remote West, where children walked for hours to reach school, relief and development plans were being implemented at unprecedented speeds. In one housing project, more than 10,000 homes were built or repaired for low-income families within 6 months. Major construction companies agreed to cut costs, and expedite progress to ensure that families once living in temporary shelters had safe housing before winter. The houses were more than just shelters. They were equipped with solar power systems, clean water access, and shared community spaces to encourage social bonding. In education and training programs, vocational training centers were established in impoverished areas, offering free courses in mechanics, construction, and IT skills. Mobile schools were deployed in remote regions, bringing educational opportunities to thousands of children like Emma. 3 community health care services mobile health clinics were sent to underserved areas, providing free checkups, medications, and vaccination programs. Those with chronic illnesses or requiring surgery were supported in traveling to major hospitals for treatment. As the movement grew, Emma's story became an inspiration for millions nationwide. Emma, once a little girl with a humble cardboard sign, now symbolized the power of courage and belief. Emma was invited to major events to share her story. At the launch of an educational support program for underprivileged children, she stepped onto the stage holding Martha's hand tightly. I once thought I was too small to change anything, but I've learned that when we dare to stand up and ask for what's right, the world listens. I don't just want to thank Mr. Trump. I also want to thank everyone who helped my grandma and me. You didn't just change our lives. You gave me a chance to dream. The applause thundered through the hall, bringing a bright smile to Emma's face, her eyes glimmering with hope. A national monument of hope was unveiled a year after Trump stopped his car for Martha and Emma at the National Mall in Washington, D.C. This monument was built to commemorate the journey of the Hope for the Forgotten movement and to honor those who were once left behind. The monument depicted a soldier kneeling beside a little girl holding a cardboard sign. Behind them were images of new homes and a flag waving proudly in the wind. Inscribed on the base of the statue were the words, "They gave everything. Now it's our duty to never forget." The dedication ceremony drew thousands, from volunteers and charities to families who had benefited from the movement. Emma and Martha attended, sitting in the front row, silently gazing at the statue. Trump took the stage, his voice clear and strong. This monument is not just a symbol of courage and hope. It's a reminder of our responsibility to keep acting. Every child like Emma, every family like Martha's, deserves a better life, and we won't stop until that vision becomes reality. During the event, Emma was invited on stage with Martha. No longer shy, Emma looked out at the crowd with confidence. I've learned that one small act can spark big changes. It wasn't my cardboard sign that changed our lives. It was the kindness of those who stopped to listen. I hope every one of you here continues to do the same for those in need. As Emma's words echoed, the crowd stood and clapped, their applause unending. Martha squeezed Emma's hand tightly, her eyes moist but filled with pride. "Emma," Martha whispered, her voice trembling, "you haven't just changed my life, you've changed the world." As Trump's motorcade left the ceremony, he sat silently, staring out the window. A nearby advisor broke the silence. "You've accomplished so much. Is there anywhere else we need to go, sir?" Trump turned to him, his gaze sharp yet filled with emotion. "Every struggling community, every child who needs a chance, that's where we need to go. This journey isn't about stopping at a monument or a ceremony. It must continue, day by day, action by action, until no one is forgotten." He looked out at the sprawling green fields beyond the window and murmured, as if to himself, Emma made the world listen. Now it's our turn not to stay silent. The Hope for the Forgotten movement, after exceeding all expectations in the United States, reached a new milestone. Trump and his team realized that stories like Martha and Emma's are not confined to America, but exist worldwide. From the crowded slums of Asia and impoverished villages in Africa to the neglected small communities of South America, poverty and helplessness remain burdens on millions. At a global press conference, Trump officially announced the Global Hope Initiative, envisioning not just immediate relief, but long-lasting course of sustainable change for impoverished communities worldwide. We have witnessed miracles when the American community came together to help the forgotten, but we cannot stop at our borders. Starting today, we will bring the light of hope to every corner of the world. The Global Hope Initiative is divided into three major phases, each addressing a fundamental issue faced by impoverished communities. 1. Poverty alleviation. Global Clean Water Project, partnering with international organizations and tech companies to build water filtration systems in villages across Africa, South America, and Southeast Asia, where millions lack access to clean water. Food aid and agricultural reconstruction, providing emergency food supplies to areas affected by disaster and conflicts while training farmers in sustainable farming techniques. 2. Education and training, building schools in remote areas, creating educational opportunities for children in regions where schools remain a distant dream. Scholarships offering scholarships to outstanding students from impoverished communities, giving them the chance to study at top universities worldwide. 3. Comprehensive healthcare services. Mobile health clinics deploying clinics to remote areas, providing free medical services and vaccination programs to prevent outbreaks. Maternal and child health care, an increase in support for pregnant women and newborns in struggling communities where infant mortality rates remain high. The story of Emma and Martha has inspired not just America, but the entire world. A short film documenting their journey and the transformations in their slum was translated into over 50 languages, aired on international television channels, and went viral on social media. In a small village in Africa, 12-year-old Amara watched the film during an outdoor screening organized by a charity. Afterward, she turned to her mother and said, "If Emma can do it, so can I. I won't let our family go hungry anymore." Amara's words quickly spread and became a new slogan for the movement in Africa. If Emma can, we can too. Despite its successes, the journey was far from easy. In many areas, the implementation team faced significant challenges, such as logistical obstacles. In a mountainous community in South America, roads leading to the village were severely damaged by floods, making it impossible to transport building materials. Trump was informed of the situation and immediately ordered the use of helicopters to deliver the supplies. Resistance from local authorities. In some regions, local officials were wary that the movement might undermine their control. Trump dispatched a special diplomatic team to work with local governments, ensuring that the initiative's goal was to benefit everyone without threatening their legitimate interests. Funding shortages. Several major projects stalled due to delays in funding. Trump organized a global fundraising event, bringing together major donors and businesses, raising over $1 billion to sustain the projects. To mark the one-year anniversary of the Global Hope movement, a grand event titled the Global Hope Festival was held in New York. Thousands of people from around the world, including those who had been helped, volunteers, and representatives from charitable organizations gathered to share their stories. Emma was the special guest of the event. Now a confident teenager, she stepped onto the stage with Martha to share her story. I once thought I was too small to make any difference, but thanks to everyone's help, I've learned that with enough courage, we can achieve great things. I hope my story inspires all of you to stand up and bring hope to others. A boy from Africa who had received a scholarship through the movement approached Emma after her speech and said, "Because of you, I dared to dream. Thank you." Emma held his hand and smiled warmly. We can all do it if we don't give up. Hope at the festival. Trump delivered a closing speech, emphasizing that this journey was not just a temporary project, but a long-term responsibility for all of humanity. Every child like Emma, every community like Martha's, reminds us that no one deserves to be forgotten. This journey will not end until everyone in the world has the opportunity to live a life of dignity. This is not the end. It is the beginning of a bigger, stronger vision. As Trump's motorcade left the event, he sat silently, his gaze distant. An advisor asked, "Sir, you've accomplished so much. Do you think there will ever be a day when we don't need movements like this?" Trump smiled faintly, his voice reflective. "That is my greatest dream, a day when the world no longer needs this movement. But until that day comes, we must continue. This journey is not mine alone. It belongs to all of us, and we must not stop." 5 years after the birth of the Hope for the Forgotten movement, its impact has surpassed all initial expectations. Across the globe, from impoverished communities in Africa and Southeast Asia to war-torn regions in the Middle East, the movement has ignited hope for millions. In the United States, the once slum area where Martha and Emma lived has transformed into a beacon of change. Now known as Hope Village, it stands as an exemplary community with modern homes, a state-of-the-art school, and a free medical center serving all residents. Emma, now a young adult, frequently teaches at the village school, inspiring a new generation of children. The old cardboard sign she once held on the street hangs in her classroom as a poignant reminder of the power of courage. "If I could change the world with just a sign," Emma asks her students during a lesson, "what can you do with this fully equipped classroom?" A shy boy raises his hand. "I'll study to become a doctor so no one will have to be afraid of sickness anymore." Emma smiles, nodding. "I believe in you. We can all make a difference." The story of Emma and the movement spearheaded by Trump has spread worldwide, inspiring not just Americans, but people in developing nations as well. The Global Hope Initiative was launched on a larger scale, focusing on 3 key areas. 1. Eradicating poverty. Global Clean Water Project. Over 5,000 water filtration systems have been installed in villages across Africa and South Asia, providing clean water to more than 10 million people. A mother in Kenya shared, "My children used to be constantly sick from dirty water. Now we have clean water right here in the village. It feels like a miracle." Seeds of Hope program. This initiative provides seeds and modern farming techniques to rural communities, helping them achieve self-sufficiency and escape poverty. 2. Education. School construction. More than 1,000 schools have been built in remote areas where children previously had to walk for hours to reach a classroom. A young girl in Peru said, "I no longer have to study under a leaky roof. Now I can dream of becoming a teacher." Global Hope scholarships. Scholarships are awarded to outstanding students from underprivileged communities, enabling them to attend top universities around the world. 3. Healthcare. Mobile health clinics. These clinics bring medical care to remote communities, offering free treatment to millions. An 80-year-old woman in Indonesia shared, "I never thought I'd see a doctor in my life. They saved me and the children in our village." Maternal and Child Health Program. This program improves health care for pregnant women and newborns, significantly reducing mortality rates in impoverished regions. In the 5th year of the movement, a new monument was unveiled at the United Nations headquarters in New York to honor those who contributed to the cause. The monument depicts a young girl holding up a cardboard sign with the words, "Hope Never Fades" inscribed. At its base is a poignant message: plant seeds of kindness so no one is left behind. As the movement continued to grow, Emma and Martha remained in Hope Village. Martha, now frailer, often sat on her porch watching Emma teach the village children. One evening, as Emma returned from school, Martha held her hand and softly said, "Emma, you've changed the world. Are you proud of yourself?" Emma smiled gently, her eyes shining. "I am, but I know there's still so much to do. I want every child to have the same opportunities I had. I won't stop." Grandma Martha squeezed her hand, whispering, "Keep going, Emma. You're the hope of a generation." Despite its many achievements, the journey of the movement remained challenging. Climate change, floods, and droughts caused by climate change have destroyed newly built infrastructure in many areas. Conflict and war, ongoing wars in regions like the Middle East and Africa, have delayed or halted numerous projects. In a meeting at the movement's headquarters, Trump declared, "We can't solve every problem in a day, but if we give up, those who need us will never have a chance. As long as one person is left behind, we must keep going." A decade after the movement began, its impressive results spoke for themselves. Over 20 million people gained access to clean water, millions of children attended school for the first time, and more than 10,000 impoverished communities were completely rebuilt. During a 10-year anniversary celebration in Washington, Trump addressed thousands of attendees. "What we do is not for fame or glory, but for responsibility. This movement isn't about me or any one person. It's about all of us. We've touched this journey, and it won't end until no one is left forgotten." He turned to Emma, now renowned social activist, placing a hand on her shoulder. "Your journey is just beginning. Keep spreading hope, Emma. You've changed the world, and you'll achieve even more." Emma looked at him, her eyes filled with determination. "I promise I won't stop." The story of Martha, Emma, and the Hope for the Forgotten movement may have concluded, but its message continues to resonate. This is not just a tale of courage. It is a call to action for all of us to help those in need. This story is fictional, but its message is real. Millions like Emma and Martha are waiting for help worldwide. They may not hold up a cardboard sign on the streets, but their pain, loss, and desire for a better life are genuine. Start small. Donate to bring change to those in need. Volunteer to directly impact lives. Share to spread this story and awaken kindness in others. If this story touched your heart, subscribe to our channel to stay inspired. Every subscription and share adds a spark of hope for those in need. Let's spread the light of compassion together.